Yo, what's up everybody? Jumping here. Today I have something really special for you on Mass Effect Andromeda. I'm going to be showing you guys the best team and setup for Platinum to make it a freaking joke. You can beat Platinum super easy if you follow these builds. I'm going to be showing you guys 4 different builds and if you do my setup because it's ridiculous. This is a debuff team that will debuff the enemies so that they will take extreme damage, and you can also set it up so that the enemies can do a lot less damage to you, which will also make Platinum a lot easier. Now there is a couple things that I will try to explain along the way, but for the most part I'm going to try to keep my explanations to a minimum because I don't want to make this like a 40-minute video, which I know that if I talk about each build and I really go into details, well then I will be here for like 40 minutes. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to start with the first member of the team, which is one of the most important members because this is your objective player, and that's going to be the Asari Huntress. Now you could also use the Angara Avenger, but I 100% recommend using Stealth Grid over Tactical Cloak. It's definitely more useful for getting hacks and uploads. And the other thing is that the host should be the one playing the Infiltrator. For whatever reason, when the host gets into an upload or a hack, the enemies just seem to act differently. They won't rush the hack as much if you are invisible. When you're not the host, for some reason, if you go invisible in the hack, a lot of the enemies will run into the hack to try to get you, and it's really annoying. Where when you're the host, from what I've seen, it just seems like they like to stay outside of the hack, and they just shoot into the hack trying to hit you and kill you. And it just makes it so much easier. So that's one of the things that you really should do, is make the host of the game play the Infiltrator. And I would recommend the Huntress, but like I said, you can also use the Avenger if that's what you want to do. But let's go ahead and get started. Now the first thing I want to say about this is that for all 4 of these builds, I'm using the same setup. You can use whatever weapon you want. It's totally up to you. But I would recommend something that has rapid fire. That way you can apply combos with your ammo type. I'm going to recommend Disruptor ammo overall, but the other ammo that you can use is Cryo. Because this team is going to be doing Cryo explosions and Cryo effects, you don't want to use Incinerate ammo because that will actually overwrite the Cryo. And it's the vice versa. If you're doing fire combos, you don't want to use Cryo ammo because it will overwrite the fire, and it's just stupid. But I do recommend using the Expert package if you have it because of the recharge speed and the pistol damage. And I would recommend using a pistol of some sort. Equalizer, Hurricane, Charger, it's just up to you. Now for the booster, like I said, use an ammo type, and that is for all 4 different builds I'm going to be showing. But for the Huntress and for the Avenger, I would recommend power capacity. This way you can have more grenades so that if you do get an upload or a hack, you will have more stealth grids to actually make yourself invisible. So that is something that is really important. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the build now. I am not a big fan of Lance, especially if you are using your shield to power Lance. I just think that that is something that's going to get you killed, especially on Platinum. So I personally don't recommend it. But I do really like Throw. Throw is definitely one of my favorite powers. It has a really fast recharge speed, and it's really good at detonating combos. Now, if you don't know, the Huntress is a really good build. A lot of people might not like her, and they might prefer the Angara Avenger. But the Huntress is good, because the way you want to play her is you want to set up combos using your ammo, and then detonate those combos using your powers. The Avenger cannot do this. Now, the Avenger does get, like, sticky grenades and Avenger Strike, and is a really good melee build if you want to play them like that. But I just really like doing combos, and because she has 2 detonating powers, she's really good for the team because you can detonate your friends' combos all the time. That's kind of the main role of the Huntress. Detonate combos, do the objectives. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about Throw now. I like to go for Radius, Recharge Speed, and Swift Detonation. Now you could go for Duration. This can prime targets for combos, but to me, I just like the Recharge Speed so I can spam it as much as possible. And this does make a difference. It's about 1 second, so if you don't care about that and you want to go ahead and go for Duration, that is fine. But I just really like the recharge speed so I can detonate as many combos of my friends as possible. Now for Stealth Grid, I like to go for Radius. The main reason for this is that I like to make everyone invisible all the time. If we need to run away, I just make everyone invisible. If someone dies, I make everyone invisible. And then I can pick them up, or my friends can pick them up if they're invisible. So it is really, really useful. I like it a lot. But at the same time, if you want to go for Power Cell, that is fine. Now I would recommend Duration. I used to really like Shield Grid, But because of platinum and because of objectives, I think duration is just better now. And then I go for ambush grid. A lot of people might not want to go for this or skip it, but I like it because I'm always using stealth grid. This just helps out because it's going to increase power damage, melee damage, and gun damage by a lot. And that is for everyone that I hit with the stealth grid. So I think it's really, really good. I put 1 point into Lance, but I do use Lance all the time. And for offensive biotics, I go for the recharge speed, I go for the combo detonation, and the biotic warrior to get more weapons damage. And for barrier, I go for the delay reduction and the shield regeneration. I go for the weight capacity and the movement speed. And then I go for saving barrier. So that's pretty much it for the Huntress. Now, let's move on to the next member of this team, which is going to be the Asari adept. Now, the Asari adept is one of the best offensive builds in the game. Unfortunately, she's really squishy. She can die a lot. She's the only member of this team that I will say that you can replace with someone else. And what I would recommend is to replace her with another Bararian scrapper, because already on this team we're going to have one Bararian scrapper, and you can always use two Bararian scrappers. And I would recommend this for any time you're going to play a bigger map where it's going to be really annoying for her to keep rushing in and blowing stuff up and then dying. So if you're playing on a smaller map where you can fight in close quarters, definitely the Asari adept is amazing. If you're going to fight from a longer distance, do not use this build. Replace it with probably a scrapper. That is your better option. So let's go ahead and talk about this. The weapon is the same, and also the expert package. Ammo, you definitely want to use an ammo type, and I would recommend disruptor ammo or cryo ammo for this setup. And then for her, I like to use a cyclonic mod because she's so squishy. That is something that will help. You can boost your shields and it will be pretty freaking good. Now for the build, once again, I'm not a big fan of the Lance build because she's already so squishy. She's just going to die a lot if you go for the Lance build. So instead, I go for a throw build, and for this, it's the same deal. Radius, recharge speed, and swift detonation. For Annihilation, you want Radius, you want the debuff. This is 20% more damage from all sources. That is really awesome. And then go for Draining Field. This is amazing for your team. You can restore 30% of the shields for everyone that is in that radius, so that is great. I keep 1 point into Lance, but of course you're going to use Lance all the time. Go for the power recharge speed. I like the combo detonation, although she does get another debuff here. So you could go for the debuff because that can help out with everyone on the team. But I just prefer the combo detonation because it does add a lot of extra damage. And then once again, Biotic Warrior. And it's pretty much the same for Barrier, but for her, I go for maximum shields, I go for Biotic Link, and I go for Saving Barrier. So that is the Asari Adept build. Now let's talk about the most important member of this team, and that is the Bararian Scrapper. This is the new guy, and he is amazing. Definitely the best debuffer in the entire game, and he's definitely one of the best builds right now in the game. He may be the best build. He makes Platinum a joke. His debuffs are so powerful that just with the Bararian Scrapper, you can beat Platinum no problem. That's why I would recommend using two Bararian Scrappers if you want to replace the Asari Adept. But you definitely want to at least have one Bararian Scrapper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out with a second build video that's going to be all about the Bararian Scrapper. And in that video, I'm going to be using a different build that's not all about getting combos. Where with this build, this is more of a combo build because of this team. This team's going to be doing a lot of combos, so obviously you're going to want to use a combo build if you're playing with a team that's going to be doing a lot of combos. But the other build is also really good, and with that build, you don't really want to go for combos. You want to freeze enemies and then shoot them to death, and with the debuffs, it's crazy on how fast you can actually kill a lot of the enemies, especially on Platinum. Now, when you do play Platinum, though, I do recommend fighting against the Outlaws because there's a lot of armor targets, and it's going to be extremely easy if you have the Bararian Scrapper. Right now, he is so good that is the reason that I would actually recommend replacing the Asari Adept with a second Bararian Scrapper if you're going to play on any map that is actually kind of big and annoying to get in close. If you're playing in a close range map, though, I would still recommend the Asari Adept. So let's talk about his build. Once again, the weapon, same deal, and also the expert package. And I would recommend using an ammo type on him, although you could maybe get away with not using an ammo type if you like. But what I really do recommend is using power efficiency for the recharge speed. You want to be able to spam snap freeze as much as possible, and getting the recharge speed is really, really nice. Now, like I said before, he's the best debuffer in the game right now because of snap freeze and because of munitions training. But let's go ahead and talk about this build. Remember, this one is going to be a combo build, where my other build that I will come out with a video with is going to be a debuff build that's not about going for combos. So for the concussive shot, I recommend recharge speed. The recharge speed on this right now is 8 seconds, and on snap freeze it is 10 seconds. So that has some synergy there. I do not really recommend using power cell. It is okay on gold, for example, but on platinum, if you're camping or staying in one position, it's really annoying to constantly have to get grenades. So yes, I recommend recharge speed because of that. I recommend radius. This is going to allow you to detonate multiple combos. Concussive shot can actually detonate many combos all at once because of its radius. It's really, really nice. And then finally, anti-armor. This guy does crazy damage versus armor, and this is really ridiculous. You can kill so many armor targets with this, especially if you get a cryo combo on them. Now for snap freeze, this is where it gets a little interesting. 100% I recommend reach, and I also recommend the debuff. Now remember, when you get a cryo combo, the debuff goes away, and the armor weakness. Now by default, this has 50% armor debuff weakness. So that's really good. But at the end here, you have a choice. Do you want anti-armor, or do you want to make the enemies do less damage? Now, the good thing about the enemies doing less damage is that even if you get the cryo combo, for 15 seconds, this will last. So that is actually really amazing. So once you detonate a cryo combo, everything that was detonated or was hit by the ice will do 35% less damage. And for 15 seconds, they'll be dead within the 15 seconds. So this is a really nice debuff. But at the same time, the armor defense debuff is amazing because it goes up to 115%. So you have to make the choice here. Which one do you want? Do you want to have their survivability, or do you want to have the anti-armor? I really am torn on this. That's one of the reasons that I kind of recommend using two Batarian Scrappers, because one can use the armor debuff and the other one can use the offense debuff. So you pretty much have the best of two worlds. But like I said, that is a choice that you will have to make, and it really, to me, depends on the team that you're using. If you're having trouble killing enemies, go for the armor debuff. If you're having trouble staying alive, go for the offense debuff. Now for the munitions training, I use powers and melee. I use the reload speed, the clip size, and the spare ammo. And I also use sustained fire. This is another amazing debuff that he gets. So overall, he can debuff the enemies 44%, and with snap freeze, you can have up to 115% weakened armor. And just by default, even if you go for the offense debuff, you will have 50% weakness armor. So yes, this is really, really amazing. Now, one of the things I would recommend to tell your friends, when you use snap freeze on a boss like a Hydra, tell your friends, please do not detonate my combo until the boss is almost dead. You can say the same thing about Berserkers, for example. That way, when you hit a Berserker or you hit, let's say, a Hydra with snap freeze, everyone can shoot that target, and then it's going to die really fast because of the debuffs. And then you can go ahead and detonate the cryo explosion when the boss is almost dead, and then you can actually get some extra damage off of that. When it comes to Berserkers, it's not super important because the Berserkers will die really fast when you have this team together because of all of the debuffs. But the Hydras are the only thing that are pretty beefy and pretty tanky. But with Snap Freeze, you will kill a Hydra super quick if you do not detonate the combo. That's the important part. Now for combat fitness, I recommend shields and health. This is up to you. If you like to be in cover, go for the cover. If you like to dodge a lot, go for the dodging. And hold the line. This is really nice. Anytime you're about to die, you're low on health, you get 200 damage resistance. That is amazing. Now, let's move on to the final member of this team, which is kind of a bitch because he's ultra rare. But he's one of the best ultra rares in the game, and that is the Salarian Operator. I absolutely love the Operator. He's super good. The best thing about this build, though, is that even if you have the card at 1, you can make the Operator build work. If you have the card at 2, you're pretty much done. And I will try to explain that here. So for the booster, once again, I recommend power efficiency and an ammo type. You want to be able to spam your powers as the Operator, so I definitely would say power efficiency is the way to go. Now for this build, like I said, even if the card is low, it's not a big deal. So for invasion, I recommend getting outbreak, I recommend getting epidemic, and you can pretty much just leave it there. You don't have to get the rank 6. But if you want to get the rank 6 and you have the points to do it, then I would recommend probably going for one of the two of these. It's up to you which one you want. I know a lot of people like the explosion. I also like the debuff though, because you can pretty much apply invasion to like a ton of enemies and they will do less damage. If you have snap freeze as well, you can have the enemies doing 50% less damage to you and your allies. That's pretty freaking good. Now for the shield boost, this is actually up to you. Do you want to get the radius or do you want to get the shields per second? Now the shields per second is nice because that's what shield boost is all about, just getting shields per second. But the radius is actually pretty freaking good. The default radius is 8 meters, which is huge. You can pretty much hit all your allies around you almost all the time. But if you go for the radius, it goes up to 11 meters, which is like kind of unbelievable. And you will pretty much hit your allies no matter what at that point. So once again, this is up to you on which one you want. Definitely go for recharge speed and definitely go for extended duration. That's extremely important. Now for overload, if your card is low, definitely just leave it at 1. Overload is fine being at 1. If your card is high though, you can go ahead and try to get it to recharge speed if you want to do that. Overload is really just used to detonate combos. That's kind of the idea. Now for offensive tech, it's the same deal. You don't have to have the combo damage, but if you can get it, it is nice. So I would recommend getting the combo damage over upgrading overload. And for support systems, you only have to get this to 5, but I would recommend the tech duration and the support systems so you can get the health, the shields, and the power restoration because that will help shield boost. Now if you have like a maxed out card, then you can get tech sabotage. On this build, tech sabotage is really not all that great, so you do not need this. And also, like I said, with overload, you can leave that at 1, and with invasion, you can leave that at 5 if you like. And at that point, you have a completed build. And you can do this at card level 2, maybe even card level 1. So yeah, it's pretty much just up to you on what you want to do. Alrighty guys, so that's pretty much all the builds. If you combine all this together, you will have no trouble on platinum. Now I'm going to show you guys some gameplay. And there's really just one thing I want to talk about before we get into the gameplay. And that is that when I recorded this, it was days ago. And one of the things that we weren't doing at that time was that we were actually not caring about detonating the cryo combos on the Hydras. Now, like I said before, if you're going to do cryo combos on Berserkers, that's okay. It's really not a big deal because they die so fast. But on Hydras, I would recommend telling your friends, do not detonate the combos unless it's by accident. On a Hydra, shoot the Hydra first and then detonate the combo because you want to keep that snap freeze debuff on that big enemy, that boss enemy. And then you can go ahead and detonate it when he's about to die. So this is something that we weren't doing in the video, but now we're doing it and it's much better and more effective to do it that way. But we still are going to make platinum look like a joke and it's pretty freaking ridiculous. Alrighty guys, well, this is going to be the gameplay and it's going to be on Firebase Magma. Now Magma is the map that I would probably recommend farming platinum on with this setup. This is an extremely easy map to do. There's not really too many hard moments. The only thing that can happen is that if you're going to camp in this one room, most of the time you shouldn't have any problems, but sometimes you might get overran. And when that happens, you have to kind of get the hell out of there. You have the stealth grid to help you do that. So normally if there's a bunch of stuff coming into the room, and generally what will happen is once you have multiple Hydras in the room, that is when you're in trouble and you need to get the fuck out. So at that point, I normally will use stealth grid and tell everyone let's go. And I try to make sure that everyone is stealthed and then that we can escape and go somewhere else to pretty much just stand our ground and fight them from another angle. And then maybe we will move around the map and eventually make our way back into this room. But for the most part, you should have no trouble being in this room as long as you're watching the back side and also the front side. Now, the cryo is of course an amazing debuff. And the Asari adept is also really good on this map because it's so close quarters. Now, I do want to talk about the role of everyone on this team and what they need to be doing. The operator is pretty simple. Obviously, the operator is going to be using shield boost a lot and evasion a lot as well. And because of the radius, you should be able to hit multiple targets with the evasion, and it should spread better that way. If you just are hitting one target, there's a good chance that it's not going to have enough time to spread by the time that that target is killed. So if you can hit 2 or 3 targets with it, it's probably going to spread to multiple enemies, if not all of the enemies. So evasion is really, really great. It's a 30% debuff, and it's awesome. One thing that the operator should try to do is at the start of the wave, when the enemies initially spawn, he should actually run out of the room, hit the enemies with evasion, and then just run away. That way, the evasion should be spreading right away. And by the time that the enemies even get close enough to your team, well, what will generally happen is multiple enemies will be already affected by evasion, and the operator should have his recharge back so he can use it again. And it's extremely good. And that's pretty much it for the operator. That's what he wants to do. The main thing, like I said, that he needs to be doing is at the start of the wave, trying to run out and hit the initial spawn of enemies with evasion and then just run away. The Asari adept, of course, needs to try to stay alive. It can be difficult because the Asari adept is extremely squishy. The Huntress can actually help out with this. I normally try to stay close to the Asari so I can constantly detonate the biotic combos. And anytime that I feel like the Asari is under attack, like let's say a Krogan or a Berserker is attacking the Asari adept, I will just use a stealth grid and try to make sure that that Krogan will de-aggro. That does help a lot. So that's pretty much what she's going to be doing, is trying to stay alive, trying to stay close to the enemies. If they're coming from, let's say, the backside, the Asari adept should be running back there to try to affect them, to try to kill them as quickly as possible. If they're coming from the front, obviously the Asari should be holding down the front door and just moving back and forth, using cover if you need to use cover, and just trying not to die. Now, of course, the Huntress, the job of the Huntress is to detonate a bunch of combos, set up a bunch of combos with the ammo type, use stealth grid to escape the dangerous situations and make everyone invisible, and of course, do the objectives. So the Huntress is, of course, really, really important for this. Now, you can do a non-combo team as well, and if you do the non-combo team, then you can use a couple different builds. And for the Infiltrator, I would recommend the Agara Avenger. The Agara Avenger really doesn't have any way to detonate combos, so it's more of a weapon build or a sticky grenade build. And of course, you have your stealth grid, you can use melee. There's a bunch of stuff you can do with the Agara Avenger, but you're not going to be detonating combos. The Scrapper would also, of course, be a key member of this team because you're going to be debuffing the enemies and you don't want to blow up the cryo explosion. And if you're going to replace the Asari Adept, you could replace that with a Gladiator. With the Gladiator, you can have a 40% debuff, and it's actually like really, really good. And the Gladiator can also not detonate combos. The Operator is still a member of the team, and if you combine all that together, you can do some crazy damage as well. To me, it's very effective, but it's just not so fun. Now right here we have an upload. Now for the upload, if you are the Infiltrator, what you want to do is you want to have 3 members of your team try to get an upload together. Generally the easiest one. In this round we got really lucky. It spawned in that one room. They were able to get it right away, no problem. Kept the enemies out and it was done in no time. I, as the Infiltrator, got the other 2 uploads. And all I do is I just get in the upload and I just keep making myself invisible. And because I'm the host, for some reason, enemies just don't generally come in. It does happen, but it's a lot less likely to happen than if you are not the host. That is just what I noticed. I've had a lot of my friends play as the Huntress or an Infiltrator, and like every time they play as it, they always have trouble getting the uploads and the hacks. Because generally, even when I'm the host, there might be one enemy that will come over to me, but what will happen is the enemy will just stay outside of the hack or the upload and just keep shooting inside of it. Where when my teammates, they try to get it and they're not the host, guess what? Like, those enemies will come into the hack or the upload and stop the progression. It's extremely frustrating. You have to do all types of stupid shit, either kill the enemy or run outside of the hack or upload, shoot the enemy, go invisible, go back into the hacker upload. It's ridiculous. So it's definitely best that the host is the Infiltrator class. Now for the Scrapper. The Scrapper, of course, is super important. Pretty simple build. All you have to do is just constantly sweep the area. You can hit literally every enemy in this entire room. If the room is surrounded by enemies, If you sweep the area, you can hit freaking everything. And of course, you're debuffing them, you're weakening their armor. If you have the offensive buff, you're making them all do less damage, and it is really nice. The scrapper is freaking amazing. There's no doubt about it. Super important for platinum. I think every platinum team should have a scrapper on it. And if you have 2 scrappers, that's not bad either, because you can have one with the offensive debuff and one with the armor debuff. And like I said earlier, the deal is this: you really need to make sure to tell your teammates, when it comes to the boss enemies, especially the Hydras, do not detonate the combos on the Hydra right away, because the cryo combo is very powerful. It's really awesome. I love the cryo combos, but at the same time, if you do not actually go ahead and detonate those combos, that armor weakness and that debuff that the snap freeze does will make it so that the Hydras and the bosses will just freaking melt. Same with Fiends. If you're fighting against them, like, you can just melt the armor away in seconds, and it's much better that way. And then I always just detonate the combo anyway, but I wait until the enemy is pretty much all but dead. And that's one of the problems with platinum, is that you can get overran pretty easily, but generally it's going to be the boss enemies that are going to do it. They're going to come into your little environment, your little camping spot like on this map, and they are going to push you out. You're just going to get overran and overwhelmed, and you're probably going to die a bunch, and you're going to have to try to escape, or you get trapped in the room because the enemies are big and they're in your way. So you have to kind of recognize when this is going to be a problem, and you have to then try to get out before that happens. If you're able to do that, then you should be fine, and it's super easy. I mean, like, this team is amazing. It's a super consistent team offensively, and if you do decide to go for the debuffs to the enemy's attacks, then it's really good defensively as well. Now right here I'm getting a hack, and of course I'm going to speed it up, but I really wanted to show this so that you can get an idea. There's going to be Berserker here, and this Berserker is going to constantly be trying to harass me and shoot at me, but he's not coming into the hack. Now, it's the opposite effect. If I'm not the host, from what I've noticed, it seems like that Berserker would just come in here and start fucking with me. Now, there is a possibility he might still come in, but one of the most important things that your teammates have to do is they need to go to the opposite side of the map to distract the enemies. If my teammates were up in that room, I would be fucked, because there would be tons of enemies constantly running through my hack, and just, it's going to be very frustrating. So it's best if the team will go to the other side of the map and try to just run away from the enemies, kill the enemies, try not to die too much. And if they die, it's not a big deal, as long as they can get each other up. And as long as they can stay alive, I can do the hack, and I can do it in peace. Now, one of the enemies that is really annoying is Anointed. Anointed will generally always come in. If you see them coming, they're probably going to come into the hack, so you need to take them out. Those are the ones I just shoot. They're pretty easy to kill overall. But the Berserkers are, of course, the ones that are kind of harder to kill. If you're playing as the Agar Avenger, it's really not a big deal. You have a huge advantage over the Huntress as the Avenger for doing the uploads and the hacks. And that is because you have sticky grenades. You can just spam the sticky grenades to kill the Berserkers, or to kill whatever enemy that is harassing you, where with the Huntress you don't have that. So that is the big difference between the Huntress and the Avenger. And that is a really good thing about the Avenger. But the Avenger cannot, of course, do combos. You cannot detonate combos, so it's kind of a trade-off. I prefer the Huntress, but I'm sure some people might prefer the Avenger. The Avenger also has sticky grenades just to constantly spam at enemies, and they are very powerful, especially if you debuff the enemies first. With all the debuffs, you will just wreck enemies with sticky grenades. So yes, the Avenger is really, really good for this setup as well if you want to use that build. Now, one thing I actually wanted to talk about in this video is that if you guys want to play some Platinum with me and you have a PS4, you can go ahead and add me and just hit me up, and I will probably be down to do some Platinum. My PSN is Jumpin' Production with no S, just like my YouTube name, but just without an S. So if you give me a friend request, I will accept you. If you send me a message, I will probably go ahead and invite you. If I need someone to play with, I will definitely hit you up, because I'm always looking for people to grind with. That's what we've been doing a lot. We've been just farming Platinum nonstop, and we're always using setups like this, so it's really, really easy, and we do it pretty quickly. Generally, we can get it done anywhere between 14 to 18 minutes. It just depends sometimes on the objectives, but if we have good objectives, it's like 14 minutes. If we have bad objectives, it's probably like 18 minutes. So yeah, I mean, we just sit here and grind. Now for the extraction wave, I do want to say something. One of the things you have to do is you have to recognize when the fuck to get away. And you, of course, really don't want to run to the LZ area, because if you do, all the enemies are going over to the LZ, and that's bad. So generally, when we run out of the room, we always come over to this little area, which is like right in front of our main room, and we just camp in this other room pretty much. And we try to build up all the enemies over in this area, so that when we run for the LZ, well, the LZ is clear, and we get full extraction, no problem. So that is something I would definitely recommend. You do not want to try to hold that room for the entire 2 minutes. You're probably not going to be able to do it. So after about a minute or a minute and 20 seconds, you need to try to get the fuck out. Even if it's like 40 or 30 seconds, it doesn't matter. Just get the fuck out when you feel like you are getting overwhelmed. Alrighty guys, well that's going to pretty much do it for the video. I really hope that you have enjoyed it. If you have, will you please like the video for me? Be sure to subscribe, and I really do hope that everyone has a very nice day, and peace out.